Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I'm your host, Rob Z. Today we have the incredible Jeff Glauser with us on the podcast. This is the Unstuck business. So we're talking about getting your business, your brand unstuck and breaking through. And I like to launch things off with a question, just diving right into the meat of the matter, because we ask better questions, we get better breakthroughs in our life and our business. Jeff, where do most businesses get it wrong when it comes to putting their message out to the world? Where do they step off on the wrong foot in that area?
Rob, first of all, pleasure being here. I'd say that the biggest thing that they get wrong is they overcomplicate the darn thing. They try to be everything to everyone. They try to put everything out there, and they basically scare off their ideal consumer base because they have no freaking idea what they're doing and how they can help.
And getting clear can be a really difficult thing to do. Building that clarity for yourself is something that takes time. That's why I really wanted to have you on here today. So the whole point of this platform, right, is to find those breakthroughs for our business. I got to shout out the sponsor who makes it happen, the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. So in this episode, Jeff Glauser, we're going to explore why it is so hard to be simple and clear in business messaging, where most businesses go wrong when they're putting their message out to the world. And Jeff, I'm excited for you to share your insights on clarifying these messages to captivate new audiences and the pivotal breakthrough that helped you to elevate your business. This is what you do for people. So they can check you out, brandscribed.com, to find these breakthroughs. What is it? Why is it so hard to be simple and to be clear? Why is that so difficult?
Well, simple isn't easy. And I think that's one of the biggest misnomers that we have, is that we have this implication that, okay, well, simple has to come naturally and it's just right in front of us. And well, first of all, even if it's right in front of us, how often do we just see beyond what we have that's at our disposal? But the problem is that there's so many different things that we've gone through and so many different revelations that we've had over the course of our career, over the course of the evolution of our business, that it becomes increasingly more complicated to really kind of identify the common through line that's going to address a very specific issue that our audience faces. So the biggest thing, and I can attest to this when I first got started. So I was at my own crossroads moments, and I had what many could say was an unconventional career. It started out as a journalist, and that was going to be the path. That was my sweet spot. I was an aspiring athlete growing up, but by the time I got to high school, I realized that it probably wasn't genetically in the cards. So the next best thing that occurred to me was, well, you know what? I enjoy writing. I enjoy kind of being in some sort of element where there is a storyline that's progressing. And I always equated that to my experiences playing and watching sports. So sports journalists seemed like the next best path. And then life happened several years into the career. Print started giving way to digital. I found myself kind of scrambling to stay afloat in the business, worked in the freelance capacity, and then started a family around that time. And determined that I wanted to do the more responsible thing, which I thought at that point was get a higher paying job that was more stable, that could help to support and grow a family. So I began teaching, and I was an adjunct professor, and that wasn't also cutting it for very similar reasons. And that's where I fell into sales and marketing, discovered I had a knack for it. Ultimately in the digital PR reputation management space. And that helped me really kind of understand audiences and pain points. And I think that's the part that oftentimes when we have this entrepreneurial spirit about us, when we're trying to build a business, we know what we might bring to the table. We have all these skill sets, we have all these abilities that we want to help our audience with, but where we often see beyond the pale and overlook a really important component is that it's not about what we are and how great we are, because nobody cares how great you are until you show them how great you can make them. And we tend to play too much hero ball. And I was noticing that in my experiences working in the digital PR space, where oftentimes we're working with high profile clients where they had some very urgent matters. We were putting out fires. And the only way that we were going to be able to build a trust score with them and create a level of relatability that would let their guard down is to truly understand what was keeping them up at night, what the potential repercussions were, and how we were uniquely qualified to provide a solution for the problem that they were facing. So that stuck with me. And when I faced my own crossroads several years later, where I was in an industry again that I felt good about, but on paper it was great, in practice not so much, because the one problem that we were missing was the consistent ability to actually deliver for the clients. So as great in theory as it was that we had this robust solution that was there to help somebody else, being a man of integrity and at this point managing my own sales and marketing teams within those divisions, basically telling them, hey, pay no attention to the elephant in the room, just keep your head down and grind, kind of wore on me as well. So that's when I found myself figuring out, okay, what was my common through line? What do I bring to the table, and how is it something that can uniquely position myself as a pain eliminator for somebody else? And what immediately occurred to me was storytelling. So whether it be as a journalist, whether it be as a teacher, as a sales trainer and manager, and oh, by the way, I went back to film school in between because I loved that and wanted to figure out if that was something that could be in the cards as well. But with any of those, if you don't have a compelling story that really resonates with your intended audience, that they can relate to, it really doesn't matter what else you bring to the table. You can have all the bells and whistles in the world. You can have all the certifications and all the glory, but it's likely going to fall upon deaf ears if you can't connect with them. So that's the hard part, though, is figuring out, okay, how well do I know my audience? And how much can I identify with what they're going through right now, to the point where I can create not only a level of empathy where it lets their guard down and they can feel like, hey, this guy gets it, but also a level of credibility where you can show them, hey, listen, I get it. I understand that pain. I figured out a secret sauce to overcome that, and I'd love to show you how.
I love that, man. And I love this conversation. It's so important because it's a thread for me that's been, as I went from, radio DJ for most of my life into digital marketing for a number of years now, into coaching, finding that common thread and finding who is the right person for me to be speaking to, who am I supposed to be serving, and what I'm doing. So I just want to share with you, for me, that journey led me back to me. It was like, well, who's my audience? Who am I supposed to be helping? And how do I help them solve those problems? Well, it came to like, okay, well, who am I? How did I get to where I am? What are the problems that I had as I was going through this process? Not just with business, but also with life, and how those two things intersect. So the way that I found a conclusion for myself was, well, I need to help me, 7 to 10 years ago, get to where I am now. And what were the steps that I had to go through? What were the pain points that I was having? And the pain points that I still experience on this journey, because I can directly speak to those things and serve people in those areas. I know that's not everybody's journey, but that's the story that I came to in the story of the hero's journey, was that, man, it's kind of like, I look at it, at the concept of, like, you always say that kind of thing, when you're older, I wish I could go back and to 8th grade again or something, right? And know what I know now then. But we can do that for people who are moving up, who are kind of in our lane, kind of in our path. Be like, well, listen, I went through all of this. I can see what you're going through because I was there 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Or maybe I'm going through it right now and I just maybe had a major revelation on the thing that I'm going through. So for me, that's kind of how I've seen that journey. But I love what you're saying, because it is so important. And like you said a few minutes ago, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? So the concept is simple, but the execution of it, the actual breakthrough you're looking for, it takes time. It takes a lot of effort to find that thing. And if you're trying to find it for your customers, you have to really do a lot of work to figure that path out of how great, like you said, how great you can make them. Because it's not about how great you are. It's how great you can make them. And that all kind of ties into the hero's journey. Can you speak to that a little bit? Somebody who doesn't know what the hero's journey is, or doesn't know how it's applied to marketing and storytelling and branding when it comes to businesses. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Absolutely. And I also want to piggyback off of that because you make such a great point, Rob, that every great guide was a former hero. So although it's not about us when we're offering our solution, it kind of is too in a way, because you need to show them that you have gone through a similar journey. You've gone through a similar struggle in order for you to be well adept at handling this next go round of the person that you're now serving. So it's a great point that you made, and it's usually how we all make our discoveries. It's like, oh wow, I had this character arc whether I realized it or not, and now I have this takeaway that I can pay forward. And even though I can't maybe relive those same experiences and say, oh well, if I could do it over, well, yeah, you can, by just basically assuming this new role and allowing that next person to take yours and find similar success. So glad that you shared that, Rob. As far as the hero's journey itself, it's a framework that, fortunately, as I mentioned, I went to film school. I've been well versed in for well over a couple decades. It's still the framework that I'd say 90% of all screenplays are based off of. It was created over a half a century ago by a man by the name of Joseph A. Campbell, who many of the most iconic and successful filmmakers credit him for helping them develop their stories. And it essentially puts the spotlight on the hero, as we had talked about, also known as essentially the protagonist, who has some sort of aspiration or goal, and is admittedly a flawed character. That's another thing that a lot of us get wrong. They think hero, just kind of the connotation of hero is, oh, well, you know, it's a superhero and they got a cape and they're flawless and all that. Couldn't be further from the truth. Because first of all, who can relate to that? And we need to be able to relate to the hero. So he has an aspirational goal, but something's getting in the way. And that something could be a variety of different things. It could be another person, so the antagonist or the villain or the bad guy. It could be themselves, oftentimes it is, as we've discovered in our own hero's journeys. It can be a circumstance, an event, but whatever it is, it's providing a barrier from getting to where they want to go from where they currently are. Mm-hmm. And of course, any type of barrier of something that we really want is going to make us feel a certain way too. So it's going to trigger this level of emotion, this visceral reaction, this human type of feeling. But at that point, we have what's known as the guide, as we had alluded to before. Now, you want to be a guide if you're a business. Too often, the problem that we see from businesses out there is they portray themselves as a hero. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the hero is a flawed character, so we don't want to portray ourselves as flawed, but the hero is also someone that's just beginning to embark upon a journey that the guide has already gone through. So what the guide can then do, think, Star Wars is probably one of the most common examples, where you have Luke Skywalker and, he is going through this journey, but he's raw, he's inexperienced, he's scared. And in comes Yoda, the grizzlied, sage that, has this proven background and this pedigree, who comes in and tells Luke, listen, I understand how frustrating this must be. And I get what you're going through. As a Jedi myself, I figured out a way to get from where I'm at to where I need to be. And you can do the same if you follow my lead. From there, and this comes back to the original buzzword, he creates a simple but easy to follow plan that can get Luke and, in general, any hero from stuck to unstuck, following this plan that he knows where it starts and he knows what the end goal is, which is, of course, that happily ever after. The other area in between that is the potential tragic results. And why this is important is because it shows that there are stakes high enough for us to care, us being the audience. If we don't have potential repercussions, why are we even watching? So, if in Taken, if Liam Neeson's character, if his daughter was kidnapped, but then the guy said, oh, listen, just say please, and I'll return her back. All right, well, that's an easy thing for him to do. All right, he'll say please. Maybe he's too prideful, and that begins the story. But there needs to be something significant that if it does not work out, this is what we're doomed to. Have enough of that, not too much where we're scaring our audience away, but if we have enough of that, all of a sudden now we're tuning in because we realize that doing nothing or doing the wrong thing are not viable options. So we have to proceed. So that same framework, and this was what was revelatory to me, Rob, is years later, I got introduced to StoryBrand. And Donald Miller, he wrote a best-selling book called Building a Story Brand several years back, wound up creating an amazingly successful certification program and, quite frankly, a brand around that messaging where he pulled from Joseph A. Campbell's Hero's Journey framework. When I read that book, obviously it was very familiar to me. It was serendipitous because of my film school experience and how I dabbled in the industry. But what was eye-opening to me was how seamlessly each of those beats translated over to the business side of things. You start with a hero. The hero is the client, okay? They have some sort of aspirational goal. This is what they want to achieve. This is what they want to win. This is what they want to build. But something's getting in the way. It can be poor operations. It can be a lack of communication. It can be content that's not converting. It can be, ignorance of IT. Whatever it might be. And we all, know our business-related problems. But because of that, not only is it getting in the way of them achieving that goal, but it's causing them to feel a certain way. Again, if there's no pain, there's no purchase. So how are they feeling? What's the pain? In comes the guide being us as the service providers. We come in and we do three things. One, we say we empathize. We understand where you're going, what you've been through, what you're trying to do, and we understand how frustrating it must be not to be able to get past it. Then a level of authority. This is why we're uniquely qualified to be able to help you on this journey. Okay? We have this type of track record. We have these types of testimonials. Here's our case studies. Here's our proof of concept. This shows you that we are fit for the job. And then we let them know it doesn't have to be this way anymore. There's a philosophical statement that basically talks them off the ledge and tells them why this is just plain wrong. Once you get there, it's that easy to follow plan, not something that's like, 13 different steps and you have to go download 4 different things and, you're basically burning calories trying to figure out what the heck it is to do business with you. Step 1 could be as simple as a book a call. Step 2 could be, let's have a discovery to determine where you're at right now and figure out what the strategy is going to be to get you to where you want to be. And step 3 can oftentimes be aspirational. Finally become the fill in the blank that you always wanted to be. Unstick yourself from this, achieve that. And then that's going to lead to the happily ever after. Or if we go down the wrong path, this is what we're doomed to experience as essentially a failed client. So it's all laid out there. And because it's all laid out there, Rob, we don't have to second guess it. We don't have to overanalyze it. We just have to follow the beats and make sure that we didn't miss anything along the way. So we're coming off as that credible guide at the end of the day.
It's what I love about StoryBrand and Brandscribed is it lays out this formula that, like we said at the beginning, it is simple, not necessarily always easy to put those puzzle pieces together. But once you put those pieces together and you lay it out, it makes it very simple and clear of who we are, why we're helping somebody, why they need help. So it's not only the problem that they think they have, right? They think they might have one problem, but the real problem is usually something much deeper than that. Like you said, the philosophical problem that they're trying to solve, and then putting the steps in order for them to find the breakthrough that they're looking for. And I really feel like this is applicable to our lives. Think of all of our lives as a hero's journey. We all, and I love when I'm working with people in coaching, I love asking them the question, what is something in your life that you're inconsistent with? Have you ever felt inconsistent with your goals, your values, your role with what you should be doing, or just what you know you should be doing with your life. And people usually 99% of the time are like, well, yeah, of course there's an inconsistency in there. That's the thing that needs to be fixed, right? That is always obvious to us. It's obvious, it's clear. Oh, there it is. It's simple. I know what I need to fix, but it's really difficult to do it, right? That's like the most challenging part, is actually fixing that thing. And to have a guide who helps walk you through that process is everything. It's so vital and so important. So I just wanted to reiterate how cool I think Brandscribed and StoryBrand is, because it is so powerful and it makes so much sense. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to jump into a 60-second commercial break for the sponsor. When we come back, you help people on your website with a brand messaging playbook. I want to know more about that and what that looks like for somebody to walk through that brand messaging playbook, and how that's really made a huge impact on people that you work with. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Jeff, the brand messaging playbook, people can get access to that at brandscribed.com. What does that look like for somebody to walk through that experience? Is it what we were talking about with the hero's journey? How do you guide them along?
It is. There's definitely a huge influence of the hero's journey within the playbook. The playbook is essentially an excerpt of my initial lead deliverable when I first started my business. It's essentially becoming an expert brand in your space and helping to change the narrative. And it's part of a 90-plus companion workbook. I did one-on-one as well as one-to-group courses that were based around that. So there was some guidance along the way. And these are, the playbook itself are some highlights of that. And it's really a great place to get started when you don't know where to get started. So when you're at that crossroads moment that we talked about, where you know that you need to write the next chapter of, whether it be of your business, of your life, or even the literal next chapter of that story, and you're not sure how you can leverage those previous chapters, the previous stories that you've had, in such a way where you can now build that trust and relatability score, be seen as credible, and also uniquely position yourself. Because the one thing that no one else can take away from you, none of your peers, none of your competitors, is your story. Okay? They can't meet you your story. What you have is what you have, and it's something that will help you to really kind of find your tribe, identify your ideal audience, and make sure that you're positioning yourself in such a way that people are going to really follow your lead. So these are kind of the rudimentary basics. And what I'm most proud of with this is I kind of tap into my journalistic roots, my teaching roots, even my training roots, and all the questions that you need to really ask yourself are going to be in this type of playbook, where you really start from the ground floor and figure out, who am I? Who do I want to serve? How am I uniquely qualified to serve them? What's the biggest problem that they have? So again, a lot of the things that we talked about, walking them through that hero's journey, you're going to at least have that foundational piece to give you the clarity that you might have been lacking at this point, and now figure out how to now take this newfound insight and this newfound clarity and begin sharing it with the right type of audience that you now are going to be in prime position to captivate.
You know, a lot of people really do have trouble telling their own story of their own journey. I find that to be a thing too, because I had to go through a few exercises with a close friend of mine of uncovering stories in my life that I could use, that were impactful, that I could share whenever I'm doing coaching or marketing, whatever it might be. And I noticed that, like, when we were going through this exercise with other people, they had trouble like identifying the right stories to tell, and they had trouble like putting the pieces of those stories together. How do you help people get started on discovering what those stories are for themselves, and then like how to form those? Because I saw that as a big challenge for some people.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Rob. So another thing that the playbook provides is we isolate the different types of stories that you could be telling in different types of situations. So you have a founder story, you have an expert story, there's a case study story, and what you're really kind of identifying is, all right, what is the arc that's happening at that point? Where are you starting, which is going to lead to what we like to call as the inciting incident. So in any movie, usually, the first 10 or 15 minutes, we're introducing that hero that we had talked about, getting to know, like, and trust them, and kind of seeing what they're trying to achieve. And now we have usually a specific event, a specific occurrence that sets off the plot. And now we're strapped in, we understand, all right, this is what we're going to be paying attention to. This is what we're focusing on. Part of the problem is when we have too many inciting incidents. And now the audience doesn't know where to focus. And they're following this plot line, they're following this plot line, and now they're lost. And because you've lost them, it becomes much more difficult to get them to keep going and follow along. So a big part of it is really kind of identifying that inciting incident and seeing where that plot will take off. So I like to call it oftentimes the end of Act 2 moment. And I'm sure we all know about the end of Act 2 in a traditional story is usually when the proverbial poop hits the fan. So everything's coming at them at once. It's their darkest moments. They had all these fits and spurts along the way, and now all of a sudden it's like that final gut punch that sends them down to the canvas. And now they're trying to figure out, okay, well, am I going to accept defeat now, or where do I go from here? Because I feel like I've done everything. So it's that act of desperation. If you can get them there, all of a sudden now you have an emotional tie that almost everyone can relate to. We've all been through adversity. So we have that commonality. Now, what can you do to talk about what that comeback is going to look like, and how you can position yourself as someone that said, all right, I discovered this when I got knocked down, and then I began this process, this simple to easy plan, and it led me to this successful result. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel with that foundational piece that we've already created. We just have to figure out which beats belong where whenever we're in a particular situation that calls for a particular story.
Yeah, that's really important. Which story am I going to use in this situation to apply to what's going on? And because you have to use those stories effectively, and using too many different narratives or too many different stories will muddy everything. Like you said, too many inciting incidents, it's going to really confuse people. And this is something I'm just going to speak from my own experiences. I was like forming my stories. It was like I was trying to fit everything into one story. Right, everything that happened into one story. And Suzanne Taylor King, the lady I was working with on this, she was like, no, you need to take your time and tell each story individually, because there's so much depth to each one of those stories, and there's so much more to each one of those stories, instead of you telling it as one gigantic whole thing. And then, like you're saying, you can apply those to different narratives when you're speaking to somebody, whether it's a founder story, a case study story, the expert story, whatever that might be. That's a really powerful method, and it really works. And we learn through stories. That's how our brains also like retain information, correct? Is that a part of what you teach too? Like our brain learns best through storytelling, not through, in school we think it's memorization. That's what they force us to do. But really it's the storytelling arc and narrative that helps us to remember things.
Robin, I think you explained why I was always a terrible test taker. I would always try to memorize everything, and it wasn't working. But when I was able to excel was actually when I went to grad school for film, and I became a terrific student. One, because I enjoyed the topics. I wasn't having to deal with something that my brain just did not, digest properly. But another reason is because everything related back to examples, and typically story-based examples. And it allowed me to essentially envision myself in that scenario and watch that scenario in my head play out. And because I can picture it, it became more real. Because it became more real, it became easier to comprehend. So you're absolutely onto something there as far as how we work from a human brain perspective to be able to latch onto something.
Yeah, I just know anytime you're watching like a presentation, if somebody's just giving facts or information, I tune out almost immediately. But if somebody pauses it and is like, let me tell you a story of what happened to me, or let me tell you this amazing story of something that happened to somebody else, right? Immediately you start to pay attention. You're like, oh, what's the story? Like, what is this? Or like when a movie starts at the end and then the whole movie is like working back to that end, going through the journey. Like that's it's something that just grabs your attention. I always think of the movie Memento was a great example of that. Like where it was like this puzzle piece that was being put together, this piece by piece, this guy's life is being revealed to you and to him because he has amnesia, right? But that movie blew my mind because of the storytelling aspect of that. And each time there was a revelation, in the order, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look, and that was actually a grad school project of mine and one of my favorite movies, but that movie almost literally went backwards from the end scene to the beginning scene. If you would have rewritten that movie in chronological order, it would not be nearly as compelling. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you are starting with something that's immediately hooking your audience in is really important. It's not just a matter of having the substance, but it's also a matter of making sure that you understand when to really make that impact and when to really kind of capture the audience when you have them.
And it's helped me even just talking about Memento. It's like, yeah, if that movie would have been made in chronological order, I think it still would have been good. It still would have been interesting, but it was so powerful because of the mystery of the unraveling of it. So if we can learn to tell our story in that mysterious kind of unraveling way, that's what really hooks people, is like, well, how did that happen? Why did it happen that way? And as you put the pieces together, by the end of it, your mind's blown. Right. And you got to go back and watch it over again. You got to hear the story again and put it together for yourself. That's a really powerful way of telling stories. That's good stuff. I love that. So this has been a really interesting episode. I find the whole story brand concept is just so simple, yet so powerful and impactful. I love to also, when I'm talking to people, find out great quotes or sayings that they live by. I saw that one that you picked out was joy or results only. Why is that a quote or saying that you love?
Well, because I feel like it encompasses everything that's important to me in my life. So my crossroads moment is when I woke up on my birthday to a panic attack. And it was at this point where I was in between careers. I had a crumbling marriage. I was hemorrhaging money. It was taking a toll on my health. And it was this what the hell happened moment in my life. I had this level of success. It wasn't like I admittedly did not have a rags to riches story. I grew up in a good environment. Of course, we all have our problems growing up. My father passed away at a young age, but for what it's worth, I had, everything set up for me to succeed. And I did up until a certain point, and then I didn't. For me, I had to actually look back and figure out, take stock in what truly mattered most to me in life. Was it fame? Was it fortune? And really, there were only two things that I discovered. I boiled it down to two different things that I wanted out of a career. I wanted to work in something that I was passionate about. So sports and entertainment, came immediately to me, whether it be film or sports journalism. And secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, I wanted to add value to a like-minded community of people. I wanted to feel like I was making a difference. And, as a mentor of mine, David Meltzer, he loves to say, paying the dummy tax. I wanted to be able to pay the dummy tax on their behalf so they didn't have to, and be able to share my experiences so they can get to where they want to go. And in order for me to do that, I needed to come down to the two reasons that mattered most for me to continue to move forward and always be compelled to move forward. And it would either be that I found joy in what I was doing, and that was going to motivate and inspire me, or preferably seeing results. I was moving the ball forward, regardless of how small. The needle was going in the right direction, regardless of how gradual. But there was this consistent, persistent effort of pursuit of what mattered most to me. And because I had that to fall back on, all I would need to do anytime I would get in my head, feel like a victim, or just, be too hard on myself, was look back and say, what am I doing, or what have I done in this past day that's either provided me joy or that's given me results? Everything else is noise. Everything else is outside junk that's not going to matter in this moment. In this moment, in order for you to continue to evolve as a person and get to where you want to go, you either need to be pursuing joy or you got to be pursuing results. And preferably, if you have everything right, you're doing both at the same time.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love that. Really good conversation, really good stuff, Jeff. I really value you coming on here, sharing your story with us and how you've impacted people, their lives, their businesses. If they want to find out more about you, check out that brand messaging playbook. They can go to brandscribed.com. Is there anything that I've left out that you want to include?
This is wonderful. No, I can't wait to keep that dialogue going because it's so important. Each one of us, if we're watching or listening right now, you have something uniquely valuable that you could be sharing to an audience that absolutely needs it. It's a matter for you to not only understand that and embrace that, but make sure that you're living your most authentic self by not doing the world a disservice and letting someone else write the next chapter on your behalf. So you get the chance to write your own story. And if I can help in any way, I'd be happy to. If you download that playbook and you mentioned that you received it from this podcast, I'm happy to also hop on a call with you and just do a deep dive analysis of where you're at in your story or in your business's story, and book a strategy session absolutely for free. So happy to help in any way I can, and I'm so grateful that you allowed me this platform today, Rob.
Amazing, brother. Jeff, yeah, awesome to have you on. So happy to have you here. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for listening. Find those breakthroughs for yourself. This is the Unstuck Business, tools and testimonies for your business breakthrough.